Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today we're taking a fresh look at the GeForce GTX 1080 Ti because every single time I do one of these GPU revisits I receive dozens upon dozens of requests to check out the 1080 Ti. So fine, I'm doing it. We're once again checking this thing out, but of course it is the first time I've revisited it in 2021. We did a revisit, I think it was April of 2020, so it's been a while since we've had a good look at the 1080 Ti. So we'll be doing that today, looking at a couple of dozen games and seeing how it's holding up and comparing with a few other GPUs that we've also recently looked at. For a quick refresher, the GeForce GTX 1080 Ti was released back in March 2017 for $700 US, which at the time was considered to be an enormous amount of money for a gaming graphics card. Oh, how times have changed. Still, despite the high price tag for the time, the 1080 Ti offered gamers an impressive level of value, packing unrivaled performance and a fat 11GB VRAM buffer. Now, if we look at our most recent data used for our GPU reviews, including recently released parts such as the RTX 3070 Ti, 3080 Ti, and 6600 XT, we see that the GTX 1080 Ti is still a very capable 1440p gamer, delivering 93 FPS on average across the 12 games used for our day one reviews. That meant it was 6% faster than the 5700 XT, but 18% slower than the 6700 XT. Then when compared to current generation so-called $700 parts, which would include the RTX 3080 and 6800 XT, the 1080 Ti is over 60% slower, but really that's to be expected for what is now a 4-year-old part. That data was recorded using our AMD Ryzen 9 5950X test system with 32GB of DDR4 3200CL14 dual-rank dual-channel memory. For this in-depth revisit, I'll be using the same test system, but I'll be covering 31 games at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. It's worth noting that this is a follow-on from my Radeon RX 5600 XT, 5700 XT, and GeForce RTX 2060 Super testing that we recently published on the channel. So I'll be using those GPUs for comparison, and while it certainly would have been nice to include a few more relevant parts such as the RTX 2070 Super and RTX 3080, please note that it does take quite a few days to add just a single GPU to this 31 game benchmark, so I'll aim to add a few more over the coming weeks. Not to mention I have had to retest a few titles such as Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, which saw a big performance upgrade, and I also updated where we test in Cyberpunk 2077, so I redid all of that testing as well. All of that said, let's take a look at how these 4 GPUs compare in about a dozen of the games tested, and then I'll check out the average performance across all 31 games, along with a head-to-head comparison with the 5700 XT. Please note, all graphs will be made available to Floatplane and Patreon members. Okay, let's get into it. We'll start with Biomutant, which tends to favour GeForce GPUs. The game uses the Unreal 4 engine, and it appears as though little optimization has been made for Radeon GPUs, and as a result the 2060 Super and 5700 XT are comparable here, and that meant that 1440p, the GTX 1080 Ti was a massive 28% faster, offering an entirely different tier of performance. Whereas the 2060 Super and 5700 XT at times dipped below 60 FPS, the 1080 Ti was good for well over 60 FPS throughout our testing, so a great result here for the old GeForce GPU. Moving on, we have the Red Dead Redemption 2 results, and here the 5700 XT performed a lot better, matching the GTX 1080 Ti at all tested resolutions. Using the slightly dialed down high settings, the 1080 Ti struggled to deliver 60 FPS at 1440p, and therefore it is better suited to 1080p using these quality settings in Red Dead Redemption 2. However, the GTX 1080 Ti was able to flex its muscles in Hitman 2, pumping out 98 FPS at 1440p, making it 23% faster than the 5700 XT and 27% faster than the 2060 Super, and similar margins were also seen at 1080p and 4K. Resident Evil Village is a 2021 release, and here the 5700 XT does get the better of the GTX 1080 Ti, delivering 7 to 8% greater performance at 1080p and 1440p. That said, the 1080 Ti was still very impressive here, rendering over 80 FPS at all times when testing at 1440p. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is another Unreal Engine 4 title, though the Radeon GPUs do slightly better here when compared to what we saw in a title such as Biomutant. Even so, the GTX 1080 Ti was 6% faster than the 5700 XT at 1080p, and a massive 21% faster at 1440p. Days Gone also favours the GTX 1080 Ti, and this is yet another Unreal Engine 4 title. Although the 5700 XT and GTX 1080 Ti were comparable at 1080p, the GeForce GPU runs away with it at 1440p, pulling ahead by a 15% margin with over 70 FPS at all times in our testing. Next up we have Cyberpunk 2077, and please note that I have updated our benchmark pass for this title, moving to a densely NPC populated area. Here these GPUs really struggled at 1440p and certainly weren't able to deliver a 60 FPS experience. For that you will need to drop down to 1080p, and please note we're not using the maximum visual quality settings either. Quite interestingly, the GTX 1080 Ti was slower than both the 2060 Super and 5700 XT, losing to the Radeon GPU by a 13% margin. Moving on to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and for this title I've updated all of our results as a recently released patch improved performance across the board. The game's still not silky smooth on older hardware using the ultra quality preset, but we did see a big 30% plus improvement for all GPUs. This allowed the 5600 XT to deliver playable performance at 1080p, and now the 5700 XT is very smooth with 51 FPS. That said, the GTX 1080 Ti was faster again, averaging 56 FPS at 1080p, which is plenty for this simulator. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is one of the older titles that we're testing with, but it's still very demanding and it looks quite good by today's standards. The GTX 1080 Ti spat out 90 FPS at 1440p, while the 5700 XT was good for 80 FPS, making the GeForce GPU 13% faster. The newest game in this benchmark is F1 2021, and although the game supports ray tracing and enables it by default, I've gone and disabled it for the 2060 Super as it's the only ray tracing enabled GPU here, and rather than place it at a disadvantage, I've simply disabled it for an apples to apples comparison. That said, with ray tracing disabled, the 5700 XT was still 25% faster than the RTX 2060 Super at 1440p, and despite that huge margin, the GTX 1080 Ti was still 6% faster than the 5700 XT, so a strong result there for the flagship Pascal GPU. Unsurprisingly, the GTX 1080 Ti powers through Rainbow Six Siege, delivering 193 FPS on average at 1440p to match the 5700 XT. It's even capable of pushing up around 100 FPS at 4K. Finally, let's take a look at Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which uses the Anvil Next 2.0 game engine, and it is rather well optimized for Radeon GPUs. The 5700 XT had no issues brushing aside the 1080 Ti here, at least when looking at the 1080p and 1440p results, where it was 14% and 12% faster respectively. Now here's a look at the average performance seen across the 31 games tested, and as you can see, the GTX 1080 Ti remains 6% faster than the 5700 XT at 1440p, so the same margins seen in our dozen game sample used for our day one reviews. This means that the 1080 Ti is still 20% faster than 2060 Super, and with 100 FPS on average, for the most part, it's still a very competent 1440p gamer. For those of you interested in how the 5700 XT and GTX 1080 Ti compare head-to-head in the 31 games tested, well, here's a look at just that. The GeForce GPU is really pushed ahead by massive wins in half a dozen of the games tested, and those games include PUBG, Biomutant, Hitman 2, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and Resident Evil 3. Of those games, 4 of them happen to use the Unreal Engine 4, which isn't a surprise. And while it is possible for Radeon GPUs to perform quite well in Unreal Engine games, take Borderlands 3 for example, it seems that developers really need to go out of their way to optimize for AMD hardware when using this popular game engine, which continues to be a problem for the Red team. If we take a look at the games where the 5700 XT does really well and manages to beat the GTX 1080 Ti, you won't find any Unreal Engine 4 titles. Forza Horizon 4, for example, uses the Forza Tech engine. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, as I mentioned earlier, uses the Anvil Next 2.0 engine. Resident Evil Village uses the RE engine. Cyberpunk 2077 uses the Red Engine 4. Doom Eternal, the id Tech 7 engine. And Dota 2, the Source 2 engine. So a few surprises there. In late 2021, the GeForce GTX 1080 Ti is still hanging in really well. Although we always hear talks of Nvidia quickly abandoning their older architectures when it comes to optimizations for newer games, and in some instances even claims that they deliberately gimp performance, this certainly hasn't been the case with Pascal. At least not yet, as the level of optimization for the latest and greatest games looks very good. I feel the GTX 1080 Ti has also aged well thanks to its large 11GB frame buffer, and I expect that it will continue to be able to take advantage of HD texture packs for some time to come. The only issue with the GTX 1080 Ti is the same issue faced by all GPUs today, and that is of course the price. and I guess availability. The lowest average selling price that we've seen for the 1080 Ti over the past few months was $550 US, and that was back in July. But in August, it hopped back up to just over $600 US, which is just $100 US less than what the MSRP was 4 years ago. Basically, you're looking at RTX 2070 money, with the 2070 Super typically selling for around $50 more. Though in my opinion, it's well worth that small premium given that you pick up some really cool features such as DLSS. So that being the case, the GTX 1080 Ti really makes no sense in 2021 as a second-hand purchase. That said, it is miles better for gamers than the 5700 XT, which is currently selling for around $800 US. So great if you already have one, as you can sell it and score a free upgrade to something like a 6700 XT, but bad if you are hoping to pick one up at a discounted price. The GTX 1080 Ti has been an interesting GPU to track over the years, especially on the second-hand market. Even during times of plenty where the market was flooded with discounted 5700 XTs and readily available 2070 Supers, the GTX 1080 Ti held its value quite well, never dipping below $400 US at places like eBay, at least for the average sale price. In fact, back in April of 2020, which was the last time I revisited the GTX 1080 Ti, the average sale price was $475 US. And at the time I said it really needed to cost no more than $350 US to make any sense. Of course, right now we can only dream of a $350 GTX 1080 Ti, but if and when the market returns to more normal conditions, you can expect the flagship Pascal GPU to tumble in price on the second-hand market, though I will believe it when I see it. For now, the 6600 XT looks like your best shot at achieving GTX 1080 Ti-like performance, though pricing and availability still looks messy over in the US, though you can pick one up on eBay for a little over $600 US. Here in Australia, we've been able to buy a Radeon RX 6600 XT graphics card for around $700 Aussie since launch, while GTX 1080 Ti's typically sell for well over $800 AUD on ebay.com.au, and that is of course for a second-hand product. So as much as we disliked the 6600 XT in our day one review, it's quickly turned out to be the best option for those seeking this level of performance, or really any level of performance. And that is going to do it for this in-depth revisit of the GeForce GTX 1080 Ti. If you liked the video, you know what to do. You can also subscribe for more content. I have a few more big GPU benchmarks in the works, so if you enjoy this content, well, there's plenty more coming, and of course we have other content as well. The usual stuff we do here at Hardware Unboxed. I'm sure Tim has some monitor reviews and other stuff coming up, so yeah, make sure you're subscribed for all of that. Also, if you would like to become a Hardware Unboxed community member, then you can join us over at Patreon or Floatplane. That gives you access to some pretty cool stuff. We have an exclusive Discord server for the Hardware Unboxed community. Tim and myself chat there with you guys. You can ask questions and talk with the other awesome members. We also do a live stream, so Tim and myself get together when we can, when we're not in lockdown. Otherwise, we do it remotely, and we chat with you guys live about whatever's happening, behind the scenes content and Q&A stuff as well. So yeah, if you're interested, check it out. Links in the video description. A couple of cool perks there, but if not, that is perfectly fine, and I would like to thank you for watching this video. I'm your host, Steve, and I'll see you again next time.